What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Her Game, Her Way Women's Basketball. Talk facts over feelings, powered by Come On Now, the podcast. Leave your comments, like the video, subscribe, follow us on social media, Her Game, Her Way Women's Basketball on Instagram. We're going to jump on this projection, this bracketology projection by ESPN, which dropped after all of the conference championships concluded yesterday. And we're going to give our thoughts on it. You know, they dropped these projections and kind of interesting to say the least. And we're going to go over some of them. Not going to go through the whole thing, but we'll go through some of them. And I'm going to comment on some of these teams that are listed here that I think are either misseeded or completely out of insanely shouldn't even be on this. I have come to the realization or expectation that the quality of talent in women's basketball is just not very good. So they will stick in a whole bunch of Power Four conference teams that might not necessarily deserve or have earned the right to be in this thing, but because the talent level on these lesser teams from these lesser conferences just is so bad that they're just figuring out, you know what, we might as well put the big names in there and we're going to talk about it. So, jumping on board with this, this is projections from Bracketology on ESPN. It dropped at 11:55 last night. And here it is. Okay. As you can see, they have you move it so it's bigger. All right. So you got the number one seeds. You got UConn, you got UCLA, you've got Texas and South Carolina. No arguments, no disagreements, no questions about it. Very, very obvious seedings. The rankings came out today for the AP. Texas and South Carolina basically flip-flopped after Texas's 78-61 win over South Carolina in the SEC championship. UConn and UCLA remain the same, both winning their conference championships. And then you have the rest of the rankings. After that, you've got LSU at 5, Vanderbilt at 6, Iowa at 7. They went up 2 slots from 9 to 7. Interesting. Duke goes up 5 spots to 8. They won the ACC championship. Michigan drops 1 to 9. Oklahoma at 10. They drop 3. It says Ohio State was Ohio State was 11. They stayed at 11. West Virginia at 12 after beating TCU in the conference championship of the Big 12. They went up 3 spots. Louisville dropped a spot, losing because they lost in the conference title game in overtime. TCU dropped 4 spots to 14. North Carolina jumps up a spot to 15. Kentucky, Maryland, Minnesota. Ole Miss goes up 5 spots, making it to the semis. Michigan State, Baylor, Notre Dame goes up 4. They're now ranked, get into the semis. Princeton, Georgia, Texas Tech. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into it in terms of all of these teams because the reality is you're going to see people wherever you see them. But when I look at this 1, 2, 3, and 4, obviously this is set up to have UConn face UCLA or Texas in the national championship. Or, of course, if South Carolina somehow pulls off a miracle and beats UConn in the Final Four, that's how it will look. Now, based on the rankings that they have here for the AP, which obviously is not the end-all, be-all for how they do the brackets, there's a lot of factors in these brackets that start off with one. You probably don't want to have a conference opponent play a conference opponent in the regional final. However, in women's basketball, when you have so many damn teams from individual conferences in the tournament, it's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible to not have a potential regional final between 2 teams in the same conference, albeit they probably don't want to put the number 2 seed as someone from the same conference. Now, that I have a problem with. That I think is an issue. So if you were to go by just alone the rankings of the AP, again, this is not what it is, but if you were to go alone by this, UConn should be in the same region with Duke. Instead, they got Vanderbilt. Don't know why. Even though Vandy's ranked sixth right now and LSU's ranked fifth, they got LSU against UCLA. So that's 2 versus 5. And you got Texas with Duke, which is 3 versus 8. And you have South Carolina with Iowa, which is 4 versus 7. If this is what the brackets look like, I have a serious problem with this. Because the easiest matchup should be a matchup for the top seed. The lowest 2 seed should be the one that plays UConn. It should be 1 versus number 8, 2 versus number 7, 3 versus 6, and 4 versus 5. That said, there's always possibilities for upsets, but in women's basketball, they don't typically happen. You don't see tons of upsets in women's basketball. Like if I'm looking at a bracket right now, for example, and I'm looking at this bracket with UConn, they got a matchup with NC State and Iowa State in round 2, potentially Ole Miss or Maryland in the Sweet 16, Texas Tech or Michigan in the Texas Tech, Michigan, Illinois, or Vandy in the regional final. I think they stomp all these teams. Realistically, I think if they played Michigan again today, they would beat them by 40. On the other side, you got UCLA against the winner of Tennessee, Syracuse. You got Kentucky, West Virginia. You got Baylor, Louisville. You got Washington, LSU. Now, again, I don't know that any one of these teams. I don't think LSU can compete with this year's UCLA. They lost to last year's UCLA, and I think they would have even a worse ending against this year's UCLA. Texas has Nova, Virginia Tech, Michigan State, Oklahoma. See, that's a potential Sweet 16 matchup with Texas and Oklahoma. It almost sounds like a punishment to me. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Georgia, Duke. And then you got South Carolina, to me, which seemingly is getting what I would say is probably the easiest bracket. Because I don't think TCU is that good. Iowa got so badly exposed yesterday that I find it crazy that they would still be a 2 seed getting beaten by 51. I know they got to the finals. I know they got to the Big Ten championship. But when you get beat by 51 points, you don't belong as a 2 seed. You can't compete with the top seeds. You've proven it. You've lost by 100 combined points between UConn and UCLA. And I don't think there'll be much different playing against South Carolina in a potential regional final. And I could definitely see Iowa beating TCU. I definitely could see Iowa beating all these teams. Like I thought for maybe if they moved into a 3 spot, it would make a second round matchup tougher for them potentially. Hey, maybe losing at home. I'm not sure, but certainly I don't see them. I wouldn't have seen them getting out of the Sweet 16 at this point. Yes, I think their cap is the regional final, the Elite 8, but that 51-point loss is rough. Now, Duke, Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame. I am looking at matchups now. So when I look at overall this bracket, like when I look at certain matchups, like I think that there should be some way to, if you're gonna include teams like, I mean, quite frankly, Tennessee. I don't know how Tennessee is sitting here looking at an 8 seed or a 9 seed. I don't see how Notre Dame, not Notre Dame, USC looking at an 8 seed, 9 seed. Like they got USC as a 9. They got Tennessee over here as an 8. How is a 16-13 Tennessee squad that lost 7 straight games to end the season an 8 seed? How is a 17-13 USC team that lost the last 4 a 9? Because they beat Iowa? I mean, this is what we've created with all these this ridiculous amount of teams from individual conferences. Let's see what they have in the bottom. You got currently 12 from the Big Ten, 10 from the SEC, 9 from the ACC, 8 from the Big 12. How in the world, and only 2 from the Big East, which is UConn and Villanova. But how in the world can you include? How in the world can you include 8 teams from the Big 12? The Big 12? And look, you want to include all these teams in the Big Ten and the SEC? You have at it. You feel free. I don't think anyone cares about who the 73 to 76 was, the 69 to 72 was. Well, maybe they care about that because they're left out. But what makes USC a team that's deserving of being in or having earned a spot in the big dance? If I'm looking at this here right here, I am absolutely trying to make a matchup between Notre Dame and TCU in the second round. Because Notre Dame is a 6 seed. Why not slot them into the same region with TCU? That Hannah Hidalgo matchup against Olivia Miles will draw numbers. It will be one of their bigger rated probably their biggest rated second round game. I think everybody would love that game. Because as a 6 and a 3, they're expected to advance to the second round. So I would absolutely be putting Notre Dame in the same bracket with TCU. And I get it. I'm seeing Texas versus ACC. That's SEC, Big Ten, SEC, and Big East, SEC. I think Vanderbilt, LSU are probably the top 2. Realistically, Duke winning their conference championship, I think could catapult them into that number 5 spot, which is the number 1, 2 seed, which to me then should put them across the line from South Carolina. Because I mean, even if I don't think that they're the best of the 4, they won their conference championship and Vanderbilt got knocked out in the quarterfinals and LSU lost to South Carolina again. Otherwise, yeah, I could see South Carolina. I could see LSU. LSU could be the number 5. And yes, I would have no problems putting them in there to face South Carolina in the regional final. You still have to win to get there. But that also shows you what they think of the competition in women's basketball is that most of these teams, it's so often a board situation where everyone who's a higher seed simply wins and advances. You know, end of the day, the Final Four for me is all the 1 seeds. And the national championship will be UConn versus UCLA. That's my opinion. And UConn will win the national championship again. That's my opinion. But beyond that, how about we create some matchups that could be entertaining and enjoyable and put some bad blood type matchups or something like that. Make it interesting. You know, when you look at, let's say, for example, you have, first of all, Iowa State. They started off 14-0 and they finished the year 8-9. I don't even know how they're in the tournament, quite frankly. But if they're going to be as a 9, I would move them to a 10. I'd have them as a 10. Why would I have them as a 10? Because I would absolutely be setting up a matchup between them and Iowa in the second round in Iowa City. They played early this year. Iowa State won at home. We'll give Iowa that same game. That's a huge game for this tournament. Because realistically, if you look at the games, there are not a lot of big games in this tournament. You know, there are not a lot of big games in this tournament. When you look at these different matchups, there's not a whole lot of intrigue here. Like, you really, what is there? What intrigue is in this tournament right now? There's not a 7 that I see beating a 2. There's not a freaking a 6 and 3 that might be the most intrigue, and a 4 and 5 potentially. West Virginia, Kentucky. Does that sound like it? I mean, it might be a good game on paper. I don't think it's not interesting to a national audience. Maryland, Ole Miss. Is that an interesting game to a national audience? I don't think so. You know? But hey, what are y'all thoughts, man? Because I think teams, I think the fact that they leave out so many, mid-major schools, it's just an example of the belief that there's just not enough talent in the women's game. So those are my thoughts. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell. What matchup would you like to see in the NCAA tournament on the women's side prior to the regional final? What game would interest you? And LSU facing UCLA again as a rematch from last year in this same spot when you got LSU ranked at 5? You're giving UCLA potentially the toughest 2 seed in the tournament, but yet they're the number 2 team in the country. That's not right. There's still something to be said for fairness and having earned it. And if I'm UCLA, I'm sitting here saying, well, if you got Iowa as a 2 seed still and they're ranked 7th, well, guess what? I want to play Iowa again in that regional final because I know I'm going to kick their ass again. I want the easiest game. That's literally what these teams want. They want the easiest road. You always want the easiest road because it makes it the easiest way for you to avoid potential injuries and that and things and keeping fresh and the whole nine and avoiding potential upsets. So, and Vanderbilt, I think Vanderbilt's a tough game for UConn, to be honest. I think that's a tough game. I think UConn rolls them, but I think it's a tough game because you're dealing with a prolific player offensively, and all it takes is one heater from a Michaela Blakes where she goes for 40, 45 points, has some type of spectacular Caitlin Clark-like performance, and you can see UConn knocked out. But is it right when they're clearly not the worst of the 2 seeds potentially? Should that be the matchup? Or should they be facing off against potentially Texas in a regional final, just based on how it's ranked right now? Just being real. Y'all let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. This is Her Game, Her Way Women's Basketball, powered by Come On Now, the podcast. Come on now.